Hi, thanks for joining us on a very special edition of Wildcat Extra. I'm Ava Wallace, the current sports editor for the Daily Northwestern. With me are Rohan Nadkarni and Alex Putterman, two of our football beat writers from this past fall quarter. Today, obviously, on campus, we had some big breaking news. Kain Coulter, former quarterback and current senior who'll be graduating this spring from Northwestern, led a charge of current Northwestern players seeking to unionize, seeking to be represented by a labor union, and they hope to form a union that will eventually come to be called the College Athletes Players Association. So we're just talking about that today and getting some thoughts from the guys.
Well, first of all, Kane was very clear at the press conference, then he went on Outside the Lines on ESPN today. It was very clear that first and foremost is health, concussion, treatment, and general health benefits. If you tear your ACL, blow out your knee toward the end of your football career, assurance that you're not going to lose your scholarship, the university will pay for your surgery. Next is the academics. The stat that they're throwing out there is that big-time football and basketball programs graduate only 50% of their players. That's a problem. They hope to be able to improve that through various potentially collectively bargained means. And then the third thing is increased stipend money or just increased funds. Kane pointed out, sometimes players run through their stipend and they're stuck without groceries for the last week of the month, and that's obviously a problem. The scholarship plus stipend doesn't always cover the full expenses of being a college student.
Yeah, I think the key here to note is that this is not pay for play, which is what a lot of people are hoping to see in college football. That's not what this is about. Like Alex said, this is about health first and foremost. It's about medical coverage. Kane is someone who dealt with concussions and a lot of other injuries toward the end of his Northwestern career. He recently broke his ankle, I believe, at the Senior Bowl, and he said today, "I expect Northwestern to pay for my surgery." This is not pay for play, but it's about what players believe is the fair coverage for what the toll they put on their bodies. Another thing that Kane has mentioned in the past, I don't think it was explicitly discussed today, but something like a trust fund or money set up to help players who leave college early come back and graduate later. Also, protection for players. Northwestern isn't a problem in this sense, but many other schools give out 1-year scholarships. Northwestern gives out 4-year scholarships. But if a player is hurt and is in good academic standing, making sure schools don't take away their scholarship just because they're injured or unable to play.
And as I understand it, part of the idea of the trust fund is having the players be able to access the trust fund after they've graduated as somewhat of an incentive for them to indeed graduate. I want to reiterate, as Rohan said, the increased stipend money really they emphasized was like a back burner, like a tertiary concern. They seem to be leaving open the possibility of pay for play being something they deal with down the road if all goes well on this front, which it may or may not, and we'll get to that. But for now, it's really the health and the academics that they're focusing on.
Right, so despite the fact that pay for play is not actually the focus here, this still was an historic day, especially in college sports. Nothing like this has ever been done before. College players haven't been organized in this way ever. What was the reaction on campus?
It seems like, we have a, I think, fairly progressive liberal student body, and I think the response was generally positive. Pat Fitzgerald, a lot of people were wondering how he would respond to this. He tweeted out his support. Said he was incredibly proud of Kane and of the other players. It seems like generally around campus, the attitude has been positive. Jim Phillips, the athletic department director, gave kind of a lukewarm statement. He said he appreciates the attitudes of trying to create reform and improve situations. He's not thrilled with the unionization aspect of it or how it's being gone about. But I think generally, outside of the athletic department, people seem to be meeting the news positively.
Right, and you said Fitz tweeted his support, but it was the support of the players, right, not of the actual method. So it seems to be the method that's the problem here, especially with the athletic department, no?
Yeah, I would say the leaders like to preach, students being free thinking and doing their thing and, trying to make change. They're just resistant when players actually do try to make change because it ends up stepping on their toes and not always being in the higher-ups' best interest. So I think abstractly they're happy to see Coulter and others doing what they're doing, but in the actual world, what they're doing isn't necessarily in Fitz's best interest or in Jim Phillips' best interest.
Yeah, I mean, a couple things to note here. I spoke to a couple former players today. Both of them, reiterated their support for Kane, and I spoke to both of them, asked them what they thought Fitz would think, and I think they both said they would never think Fitz is 100% behind something like this. In our dealings with Pat Fitzgerald, he's a really traditional guy, especially when it comes to college football. He relates to the players on some level because he was a player himself, but he's someone, his job is to win football games. I don't think he's particularly excited about a distraction like this. I also don't think he's particularly excited with the idea of, his players forming a union. There's a reason, and a very good reason, why the players didn't tell the athletic department or Coach Fitzgerald until this morning. It's because they knew they would never have the full support of the university, so it's something to monitor. Just in terms of outside reaction, outside of campus, I think it's been a lot more mixed. You're getting a lot of people, and it's clear that a lot of people are still very uneducated about the issue. They don't understand that, again, this is not pay for play. They're not understanding what this union is all about, so it'll be interesting to see what unfolds, especially if the university doesn't get involved, and with the current players saying, they won't speak on the issue, only Kain Coulter will.
Right. It was an important point that Kane is the face of it. He's no longer part of the Northwestern football program, so his interactions with the Northwestern football program don't really matter. He wouldn't identify any of the other players who signed the petition, and by the way, apparently an overwhelming majority of players, so almost the entire team, it sounds like, signed the petition to attempt to unionize. We don't know the names of the other players who signed, presumably to protect them from any institutional problems they could come across.
Right, and just as a last question, so what does this movement towards organization mean for the future of the program, especially with spring football coming up and then looking ahead recruiting?
I'm not sure how it's going to affect recruiting. On Twitter, some recruits seem to view this positively. Down the road, if this is passed and they become unionized, that could be a benefit in recruiting. Even the whole unionization process actually only applies to private universities because public universities are governed by state laws. So, and we're talking way down the road and tons of ifs and a lot still to play out. If the union did form, it could be at least a short-term benefit to Northwestern. I don't think this has a major impact on the short term of the program, today moving forward into next year. I think it's something that'll hover in the back burner and maybe flare up from time to time. I don't see it being a day-to-day thing.
Yeah, my reaction and just some questions I have that I'm very interested to see, looking forward. First of all, how ornery is Fitz going to be this year? He's not typically the happiest guy. He's going to get a lot of questions about this, whether he says he's going to no comment on them or not. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. What's the university's role going to be? Are they going to support the players? Is there going to be a conflict? Right now, this is Northwestern versus the NCAA. Very soon, it could be Northwestern versus Northwestern. I'm very interested to see what's going to happen, the dynamic between Jim Phillips, Pat Fitzgerald, and the players who are on this team right now saying we want to unionize. That's going to be something very interesting to look forward. And also, are other college players going to join this movement? My understanding right now is that it wouldn't necessarily make sense for other players to join the union because I think this is a Northwestern-specific union. I could be completely wrong on that, but right now this is a very Northwestern-centric movement. It's starting here. It's starting in Evanston. Are other players going to join? We'll have to find out.
Thanks for joining us, and be sure to check out full coverage on dailynorthwestern.com and at Wildcat Extra.